Hi, welcome to Promo Insiders, an ASI media podcast that covers the issues that matter most to the promotional products industry. I'm Chris Ruvo for ASI. Today, we're going to delve into an important topic. It's one, however, that many business leaders fail to address adequately. I'm talking about staff succession planning. Fortunately, I'm joined today by Jeff Butler, an expert in staff succession planning and much more. An author, workplace strategist, and TEDx speaker, Jeff is a researcher and practitioner who explores human behavior in the working world. His experience in understanding the interaction of different cultures and generations of employees spans over 40 industries on 4 continents. The CEO of TrinityFix, a consulting business and tech company, Jeff's clients have included household names like Google, Amazon, John Deere, and Coldwell Banker. Notably, Jeff will be speaking on succession planning at the upcoming ASI Power Summit to be held October 13th through the 15th at the Rancho Bernardo Inn in San Diego, California. His chat with me today will tease some of the insights that he'll share at the summit. Jeff, thank you for being with me.
Sure, my pleasure.
Yeah, so I want to start real basically, if we can. Just tell us, what is staff succession planning? Just let's start there.
It's exactly what it sounds, essentially having a plan to effectively replace someone else if they would leave, have turnover, something of that nature. So it's having essentially a plan to successfully replace a prior employee, or maybe that's yourself.
Okay, all right, very good. So it could be anything from a staff member to you yourself as the owner, just
Yeah, and
anything to position that company up for that next generation of success in a position.
exactly. And I think some of the big concerns of why even being brought in there is that there's a lot of aging workforce in this particular industry.
Okay.
And there's a lot of concern on how do you actually keep your legacy of what you've built continuing to grow into the future while holding similar values that got it to original spot. So the main goal is, all right, how do you effectively have that succession plan, which is, I presume, why I'm being brought in there in the first place.
With that in mind, though, it seems like, and this speaks to the point you just maybe made. Do companies tend to overlook this? Is this something that maybe people start thinking about too late?
It's the same thing with life insurance.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about it because you're alive.
Hmm.
You're not thinking about it because you're in the job. So
Hmm.
you have to think ahead. Like, it's more important to worry about closing the next sale or next deal, or maybe someone has a new marketing idea and you have to work on that. You have to go several steps ahead.
Okay.
And the difficult thing too, and I see this more when a leader has to replace themselves in,
Okay.
let's say, a managerial or C-suite position, it's it's like having to retire.
Okay.
People don't like it. And it's like it's emotionally difficult because you're thinking, well, I'm never going to step down, but then having to think of who's going to take my spot is it's emotionally very difficult. So there's more one thing than play. You have, of course, prioritization day to day, and
Hmm.
the actual, if it's yourself, the side of, hey, I'm actually going to be replaced here. And that's
Right.
kind of a sad thing, especially if you enjoy your job. I mean, it's a good thing if you don't, but
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand. There's emotions in play here, and I think too, and you sort of alluded to this. It's people are busy with the day to day still, and it's sometimes tough to extrapolate out that little bit extra that you need to give this a thought. However, it's important too because it seems like there may be some significant repercussions if you fail to address this adequately. What might some of those be?
well, you have a huge power vacuum within your organization, and then you have the leader at the helm. I'm presume this is more for leadership roles, but it can even be for individual contributor roles,
Hmm.
that you now have to scramble and
Hmm.
find someone who's not the best fit for the role. That's the worst case scenario, that now things are starting to fall apart and you have now a sinking ship. You have to plug the leak, and you're not going to end up with the best candidate you could have.
Okay. All right. All right. Great stuff. So maybe just by virtue of contrast, it answers the next question. But what are some of the top benefits of proper staff succession planning? Why go through this exercise?
Well, you can not only find someone who's as good as you, but even better,
Okay.
right? That can even help further extend whichever thing you're trying to do with succession planning. Like, I've
Hmm.
had to do this quite a few times with managerial positions, and it
Hmm.
is quite difficult when you, in the back of your mind, it could be like, there's a few different cases here. It could be one where you're working with someone and you kind of have that gut feeling they're probably not going to work out in 6 months just for
Okay.
whatever reason. And then you kind of have to, in the back of your mind, be thinking, all right, if I'm going to find someone who's going to help replace this position, what do they look like?
Hmm.
Or it could be someone's retiring and it's yourself. How do you replace you? All those different variations require a different level of skill. But the good news is if you have that forethought, you can say, okay, what's working here and what is not working as well? And you can find a candidate who meets both of those criteria, which means they can be even better than what was there before.
Okay. So, I mean, if I were to, generalize very broadly, I'd say if we undertake this exercise and we do it in the correct way, we're essentially strengthening our business in the long term. We're setting our business up for the best possible chance of success, because there's if you do it right, there's not going to be a big drop off or any drop off between the level of where you're at now from when somebody moves on to something else.
Precisely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. So with that in mind, what are some of your top tips or strategies for companies large and small? I know you worked at some huge companies, but I know you work with small businesses too. So does it differ from small business to large business, or is there just some general strategies you can apply to properly plan?
Here's some general strategies. You first off need to think, are you going to hire externally or internally?
Okay.
That's the first decision you need to make. Secondly is there tends to be a correlation between the more senior the position, the longer it is to replace them.
Okay.
And even you should be spending more time on what is required for pretty straightforward reasons that there's more job requirements. So for instance, let's say you're looking over a managerial position and you find it's more of two roles, or maybe Stacy, who's also in the office, should be the one doing the reporting, not the current manager. So you can offload some work and then maybe find more of a people pleaser, good networker who's a better person to be customer facing versus the prior manager that you had that maybe is more of an analytical type that just did the reporting.
Okay.
Right? So those are a few different ways of thinking about it. So yes, correlation between levels of seniority usually takes longer, and internal versus external. Which one do you want to go with? And there's pros and cons to both, and I can go into that too if you would like.
That would be fantastic. Yeah. What are some of the, I guess, the pros and cons of internal versus external?
So the internal versus external, the internal pros, they already have adopted your values.
Okay.
And you have them, you've worked with them, they're seasoned, they understand why things work the way they do. And you're also starting to jump into their desire for promotion. So it's like, hey, you sacrificed 4 or 5 years being here. Here's your reward, boom. And you can, and essentially buy, for lack of a better term, a longer tenureship because their hard work now is paying off. They're seeing that reward. And that's been a huge complaint of many employees all across various generations is, hey, you don't make money by staying at one company. You make money by jumping from company to company every 2 to 3 years. That's the traditional piece. But you can think of it as the reverse, where you can say, well, because of that stereotype, I can go against it and provide a unique opportunity for someone who is very tenured and work them up to that role.
So it's a way of flipping it on its head almost, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, wow, I have this unique opportunity to actually, my skills have been recognized by the organization. Fantastic. So it can work well in that sense. The cons is sometimes you don't have a deep enough bench.
Okay.
Right? You might not have someone who has the mental horsepower to make that jump. And you might just see, hey, there's 4 potential candidates. None of them seem like they can make that jump. Fair enough. What I've done in that case is I've opened it up and say, hey, I mean, this only means if you have someone who's known to be leaving, right?
Okay.
So
yeah.
It's a very unique, but you can say, hey, we have this opening up. If you want to interview for the spot, let us know X, Y, and Z. Here's the criteria that we're looking for. And then open it up for the rest of the team. And if people don't meet the mark, if you bring someone else, you can say, here's the reason why people didn't meet the mark, 1, 2, and 3. So then it gets less of the political reasons for putting someone in that role. Because the thing is, if you start involving politics, or at least people perceive as politics, that contradicts low self-control. So people feel like they're in less control of their environment because there's, strings behind the scenes where you can't control. And that creates disengagement. So you ultimately want people to feel more control of their environment. So here's a level of transparency to help people move forward and do well in their jobs.
Okay. Very, very interesting stuff. It's just a question that occurred to me while we were chatting here. How deep should you drill down in terms of level of position that you should be staff succession planning for? Like, does it start at a certain mid-management level? Does it go lower? Or should you start higher? Like, what's your best recommendation there? Or does it depend on the company?
Well, it depends on the company a lot, but I presume that for the conference or even this podcast, it might be more for someone's thinking about an individual position. And in this case, it's usually more senior. It's not usually individual contributor, because individual contributor tend to be faster to help replace,
Okay.
unless you're like a 3-5 person shop and your assistant of 10 years is leaving.
Okay.
Then that makes sense, right? But if you're
Sure.
an enterprise of like 50, 100 people, and someone who's an SDR decides to leave all of a sudden, that's not necessarily the end of the world. So in terms of how deep, are you referring to this more as level seniority of like how much should you be looking in deep in terms of time horizon, or in terms of the
I think on the,
organization's
yeah,
hierarchy?
look, my question pertained to level of seniority at a company. Like, how could I put it? Like, you should definitely, for XYZ positions starting around here, you should definitely start succession planning for that. It sounds like it kind of depends on the size of the company, because to your point, if it's a very small shop,
Yeah, but I also would say as soon as there's any level of seniority, there is a piece of that. Because let's say you're a director and you have several managers, and Bob wants to retire in 5 months. Okay, who around Bob out of the various teams that you are overseeing could be a potential fit? Or can one of the current managers that you have, could, let's say, siphon in the current team that Bob's working with, so then their team expands, who's been showing more responsibility, and then there's a pay increase for increased responsibility. Those are several decisions you need to make, right? Do you have someone move up, or do you have someone who's horizontal, who grows in terms of their responsibility level, right? So I would say as soon as there's some level of hierarchy, managerial and above, you start getting into that mindset. However, smaller, yes, you can be more in the individual contributor level of succession planning.
All right, that was great stuff, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining me today, everybody. That was Jeff Butler with TrinityFix. He's going to be speaking at the ASI Power Summit with a lot more great insights on staff succession planning. It's a very important thing, as Jeff emphasized today. We just kind of scratched the surface of it. So, Jeff, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in San Diego.
I appreciate it. It's going to be a nice time.